I strongly condemn the deliberate attack on a Hindu temple in Canada. Equally appalling are the cowardly attempts to intimidate our diplomats. Such acts of violence will never weaken India's resolve. We expect the Canadian government to ensure justice and uphold the rule of law. So very, very strong statement that from the Prime Minister, condemning in no uncertain terms the attack that happened on the temple in Brampton, Ontario. But this is not the first time that this has happened. What has been really appalling is the fact that this was a bunch of 20 or 30 Khalistanis who were leading the charge, and the police were looking the other way. And that is of great concern. That is of immense concern to Hindu Canadians. The Member of Parliament, the Hindu Canadian Member of Parliament, Chandra Arya, has tweeted about this as well, completely condemning this. And the fear is that this is driving a wedge, possibly an unsurmountable wedge between the Hindu Canadian and the Sikh Canadian community. And let's be very clear, the Khalistanis are a very tiny minority even within the Sikh Canadian community. And because they've been given this outsized influence in the Trudeau administration, that is, of course, forcing a lot of Indo-Canadians, whether they're Hindu or Sikh, to rethink the kind of support that they've given to the Liberal Party. Even on the Conservative side, Pierre Poilievre, who is the opposition leader, has tweeted condemning it, but he has also refrained from naming the Khalistanis. So let me go across to Terry Miliuski, senior journalist, author, somebody who's been tracking the Khalistani movement, as it were, in Canada for the better part of the last 3 or 4 decades. Mr. Miliuski, you know, shocking, appalling. I can't find more words that would resonate with what we saw at the temple in Brampton, Ontario. But are you surprised by what happened? This was coming, wasn't it? That the Khalistanis would ultimately attack their own brethren, their own Indian brethren, Indo-Canadian brethren, who were there for what? To peacefully assemble and celebrate one of the holiest Hindu festivals, Diwali.
Yeah, this was coming. You put it well. These are the chickens coming home to roost from the last 40 years of not just the Liberals, but the Conservatives, the New Democrats, and the left-wing party in Canada. They've all been playing footsie with the Khalistanis on the principle that this is going to help at election time. And about the details, they didn't really care. They didn't really inquire. They weren't curious. They just let it all happen. And it happened more and more and more. And now we have what is the first occasion that I can remember in 40 years of covering this story, that there's been this kind of open aggression by a Khalistani group, actually bashing people on the head with sticks, and on the top of the sticks, of course, yellow flags saying Khalistan Zindabad. And I suggest to your viewers that it wouldn't be a bad idea to listen to the audio on that video that you showed. Play the audio, because you can hear the lady who's taking some of those pictures pointing at the police and saying, Khalistani police, Khalistani police. This is one of the most shocking aspects here, which I think you're right to highlight, that the police do seem to be standing by. And it's unbelievable to outsiders, but believe me, this has been happening. One very brief anecdote. A friend of mine who, before the Air India bombing in 1985, the Kanishka bombing as Indians know it, he called for peace, for a peace agreement. He was in favor of the Rajiv Longawal agreement. Never mind the details now. But he got some friends together, some Hindu friends. He's a young Sikh, 28 years old, and together they decided that they wanted to give peace a chance. So for that crime, the Khalistanis beat him nearly to death. 5 guys set upon him with baseball bats. He was lucky that he got away with his life. And after that, the police came to see him. They thought, well, that'd be interesting, because I've identified some of these guys. No, that's not what happened. The police came to grill him and ask him who blew up Air India, because their logic was that you must be a bad guy because you got beaten up, and it must be the good guys who are beating you. So they got the whole story backwards, and they accused he applied for government compensation as a victim of crime, and the police opposed his application because he wouldn't cooperate. He wouldn't tell them who blew up Air India. Well, he didn't know. He was a 28-year-old peacenik. So the depth of misunderstanding by the police, by the political echelon, and by, frankly, the media, guys like me, who didn't really convey to Canadians how we'd got this hopelessly wrong. And I give you that example as just...
I do want to come back to what happened in Brampton, though, Mr. Miliuski.
Yeah.
Because from looking at the footage, is your assessment that this couldn't have happened without the police actively looking the other way? A lot of folks there have been tagging and tweeting at the police chief, Mr. Nishan. And secondly, there was some concerning footage of one policeman who is not in uniform, I believe. I've not seen the footage in great detail, but I believe he's not in uniform. But he is a Sikh person. He's a Khalistani element. He is with law enforcement in Brampton. And he was part of the mob. He was part of the mob who were beating up people. And I believe a statement that's been put out just in the last couple of hours seems to suggest that he's been suspended from the force. How concerned would you be about that if there are Khalistani elements in the law enforcement agencies in Canada? Then what hope do the Hindu Canadians have?
No, that's my point exactly. There's not much hope, is there, if law and order is out the window and they're joining up with Khalistani ranks? I think this is something we need to learn more about, though, to find out the details before we go condemning this officer. And even if he was an officer, neither of us know those details, and we've got to get the facts right before we go around condemning this. But if it were true that there was somebody on the police side of the line who was taking the Khalistani side, I'm here to tell you that's not a big surprise. It's been happening for years.
All right, Mr. Miliuski, we'll leave it at that. The concern also is the political establishment, whether on the liberal side or on the conservative side, are simply not willing to call out the Khalistanis for this. And that's just, plain naked old politics, because none of them want to be seen as upsetting folks who they think are a critical vote bank. But at the end of the day, questions need to be asked, and hard questions will be asked of the Canadian political establishment, the Trudeau government, of law enforcement there, because you can't just go around beating people just because they want to celebrate one of their most important festivals. Anyway, just a quick reminder, I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C., outside the U.S. Capitol building. We're at the Capitol Hill grounds or the lawns. Mind you, this was the same place where 4 years ago there were violent scenes because one side refused to accept the results of the election. We hope we don't get to such a situation in the 2024 election. It is going right down to the wire between Kamala Harris, the incumbent vice president, and Donald Trump, the former president. Who may ultimately end up winning the White House depends on a couple of factors. One, the swing states. We've been talking about this for a number of days now. Whoever wins a majority of the half a dozen or so swing states will win the White House. And two, also this diverse coalitions that both sides are trying to put together. On the Harris side, they're dependent to a great degree on women. They believe abortion is the number one issue on the ticket. On the Trump side, they believe there's a large number of disaffected people, not just the MAGA base, but a lot of people who are upset with the economy, with inflation, with the two wars that are going on, with immigration. Enough number of people, they believe, will turn out in good numbers to vote out the incumbent. It's going to be a fascinating election. And join me, Zaka Jacob, and our team of reporters. I'll be live with you here in Washington, D.C. all through the week, this week, here on CNN News 18 for what is promising to be the most exciting race for the White House. If you've been tuned in, thank you very much. Rahul Shivshankar is up next with the hard facts.
Viewers, a few weeks ago I wrote a piece titled, quote, "Is Canada the new Pakistan?" unquote. The response from the usual suspects in the left ecosystem was bitingly critical. They were so hurt that I was taking Trudeau to task and via him, the Khalistanis. How could I imply, they asked with incredulity, that the Canadian state was like Pakistan, enabling sectarian terrorism by giving shelter to sectarian terror outfits. In particular, Khalistani groups sworn to establish a theocratic state in India. Where was the proof? They wanted to know. How could I assume? They asked that Hindus were not being treated with dignity in Canada just like they aren't in Pakistan. Why was I bringing religion into the picture? Was I a Sanghi? And so on. This was the kind of response, viewers, I got to my article. Today, viewers, the answer to that question, or those series of questions, is captured vividly in these 3 videos I'm showing you on your screens tonight. These pictures are from 2 Hindu temples in Canada, to be precise, from Surrey and Brampton in Canada. Here, Sikhs professing allegiance to Khalistan, bearing Khalistani flags and armed with batons, are thrashing Hindu devotees who have assembled for, among other things, a consular camp co-organized by the Indian High Commission. Now, the Indian High Commission routinely sets up these camps in gurdwaras and temples, where they explain to the Hindu community and the Sikh community and others from the diaspora about how to go about attuning to official life as immigrants in Canada. So all sorts of paperwork they will advise you on. They will advise you on what documents you require for your PR or whatever it is that you require to stay on and lead a good, productive life in Canada. But within a short span of time, right after this council meeting began, Khalistani thugs, and you can see them on your screens, moved in. They begin punching, kicking, and baton charging the Hindu devotees. They came very well prepared and armed, viewers. This goes on for a fair bit. The police were there, but reportedly did little. In fact, the organizers of the temples had actually written to the police and the local authorities saying that they apprehend that they're going to be attacked, that they're feeling that the Khalistanis there have become extremely emboldened, and can a large batch of security be provided. But viewers, the Canadian state did not oblige. And even those that were present there from the security establishment, to everyone's dismay, started thrashing the victims and not the Khalistani thugs. In the footage, a bearded officer is seen charging at a man and then punching him, seemingly without provocation. A ruckus ensues. Another police personnel surround the scuffling duo, while another policeman pulls a man to the ground. 2 others also join in, and they put a lock to the person's neck. This is clearly disproportionate force. The Hindu devotee is almost choking to death. And you remember, viewers, how in America, the police choked an individual to death, and that led to, of course, a lot of violence. But this was exactly the same. The chokehold was applied, not by 1, not by 2, but by 3 policemen. The coward Canadian police are either clearly sympathetic to the Khalistani thugs or have been told to stand down. We don't know, viewers. A woman who caught the incident on camera points out the bearded officer, accusing him of assaulting people, and criticizes the police for allegedly targeting only the Hindu community members while shielding Khalistani protesters. Now listen to this chilling sequence. It's about 2 minutes, 30 seconds, viewers, but I promise you, this will drive home very succinctly, but chillingly, what actually transpires. The terror in the assembled Hindu community members. Just watch this sequence.
He is the one. 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 Sir, take him out. Take him out. He is the one. He is the one. He is the one. Please ask them to go, please. And he's hitting with the stick. He's hitting with the stick. They are here. They are hitting with the stick. Leave it, sir. This is our protest. Leave it. He's hitting with the stick. This guy hitting with the sticker. He's hitting us with the stick. This guy hitting with the stick.
You guys. Get up!
All the police officers hitting us. All the police officers hitting us. Look, all the police officers hitting us. Everybody hitting us. Everybody, and they didn't say nothing to them. Damn, look at everybody hitting us. Everybody. He's the Khalistani police hitting us.
Viewers, there were insinuations, and we are being told that the actions of that one policeman are under investigation and that he could even be suspended. We're awaiting word on that finally, but we are being told, I don't even want to name that individual right now because it can lead to legal trouble, but we do know that he is of Sikh origin. It'll be hard to block out the pleas of this woman, of this devotee, of this individual who has witnessed this terror. And they certainly, viewers, her pleas have shaken up and hopefully also galvanized Hindus in Canada. A Canadian Indian member of parliament has spoken out, but more on that later. The lady who actually singled out some of those police officers who went ahead and beat up, not those who began the violence, not the Khalistanis, but, viewers, the victims. She later spoke about what she saw. Listen.
यहाँ पर इंडियन कंसुलेट की ओर से लाइफ सर्टिफिकेट जो ओल्ड पीपल होते हैं जो जिंदा है कि नहीं वो लाइफ सर्टिफिकेट यहाँ देना था रिटायरमेंट लोगों का। तो मेरी ड्यूटी लगी थी। जब मैं आई 12 बजे तो यहाँ पर 4 बंदे हमारे प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे थे। खालिस्तानी बहुत ज्यादा आगे हुए।
कितने बजे? करीब 12 बजे।
12 बजे जब मैं आई तो वो लोग 11 बजे से आगे हुए।
वो 11 बजे से आ चुके थे।
जब मैंने देखा कि ये लोग बहुत ज्यादा आगे हुए हैं और हम सिर्फ 4 लोग हैं, तो मैंने आजाद सिंह गोयल जी को फोन किया कि भाई हमें और बंदे चाहिए, हमारे आ जाए। मैनेजमेंट की ओर से हमें कोई नहीं वो तो प्रोटेक्शन नहीं मिल रहा था, सपोर्ट नहीं मिला। पीसफुली प्रोटेस्ट किया, पर उन्होंने हमारे पे लाठी चार्ज किया खालिस्तानी लोगों ने। मेरे पास सारी वीडियो है, हमें भागना पड़ा वहां से, मुझे भी मारा।
आपको चोट लगी?
मुझे चोट लगी, तो मैं वहां से हम लोग भाग के आ गए थे अंदर मंदिर में। बट पुलिस वाले हमारे साथ ऐसे बिहेव कर रहे थे जैसे हम लोगों ने उन लोगों को मारा है। हमें मारा, बहुत मारा। 2-3 पुलिस वाले थे, उन्होंने हमें लाठी से मारा। पुलिस वालों ने लाठी से हमें मारा। मेरे पास वीडियो है जी। पुलिस वालों ने हमें लाठी से मारा। वो हमें ऐसे ट्रीट कर रहे थे जैसे हम सेकंड क्लास सिटीजन हैं।
Well, members of parliament spoke out against the bigotry, most alarmingly against the Canadian state, admitting that Khalistani extremism has now permeated the Canadian state. Viewers, unfortunately, it wasn't those Canadian members of parliament who belong in any which way to the dominant community in Canada. It took an Indian origin Canadian MP, Chandra Aryan, to come out and speak. He said a red line has been crossed by Canadian Khalistani extremists today. The attack by Khalistanis on Hindu Canadian devotees inside the premises of the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton shows how deep the brazen the Khalistani violent extremism has become in Canada. I begin to feel that there is a small grain of truth in the reports that in addition to Canadian political apparatus, Khalistanis have effectively infiltrated into our law enforcement agencies. But while a Canadian Indian MP is calling out the attack, for what it is, bigotry, Canada's Prime Minister chose to be shockingly coy. He dismissed the hate attack as a mere, almost colorless act of violence. Never once did he mention that the perpetrators were Khalistani radicals. Here is Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. This is what he said, and I quote him: "The acts of violence at the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton today are unacceptable." Acts of violence, viewers, those are his words. Every Canadian has the right to practice their faith freely and safely, unquote. Very anodyne statement, but despite Trudeau's attempts to whitewash, MPs like Arya aren't wrong about the institutionalized bias against Hindu grievances in Canadian officialdom, especially under Trudeau. The writing has been on the wall for quite some time, and no one should be surprised that Hindus have been attacked in broad daylight with little or no state intervention. Here are some hard facts, viewers, that underline while many people are talking of the rise of Canada. That is Canada with a K, not a C, Canada, viewers. And I always bring you these hard facts so you can get closer to the truth. In 2024, just this year, Khalistani terrorist Panun admits his outfit, Six for Justice, was in touch with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office and shared information against India in the wake of close aide Nijjar's killing. Can you imagine, viewers? A terrorist has a direct hotline to the Canadian Prime Minister's office. This has not been contradicted by the Trudeau regime. In fact, it was admitted to. In 2024, the Canadian Parliament observed a minute's silence to commemorate 1-year death anniversary of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. A terrorist, viewers, celebrated. 2024, Trudeau shares stage with Khalistanis amid pro-Khalistan slogans during a public event in Toronto. In 2018, during Trudeau visit to India, Jaspal Atwal, convicted Khalistani terrorist, was invited to a Canadian High Commission event in Mumbai. A huge uproar was created at that time. The Chief Minister of Punjab, Captain Amrinder Singh, took real offense and decided, in fact, to block Trudeau. In 2017, Trudeau attended a Khalsa Day parade featuring glorifying Khalistani terrorists Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, Amrik Singh and former General Shahbaz Singh, all Khalistani terrorists. Trudeau's government was supported by Jagmeet Singh, leader of the New Democratic Party, a Khalistani sympathizer. In 2019, Canadian government's terror report amended to expunge references to Khalistan-related Sikh extremism on Canadian soil. Liberal MP Sukh Dhaliwal, member of Trudeau's party, signed a petition claiming that Kanishka bombings were the handiwork of Indian intelligence, viewers. In fact, in the Kanishka bombings, even Canadian citizens died. Sandeep Singh Sidhu, part of the banned International Sikh Youth Federation, was an employee of the Canadian Border Service Agency, the CBSA. Khalistani sympathizer Navdeep Bains was in Trudeau cabinet until 2021, till he was removed on graft charges. Now that more than one Canadian MP has alluded to state-sponsored support for Khalistani extremism, will the ecosystem still deny that Canada is fast becoming a problem country for Hindus, just like Pakistan? Will the ecosystem still argue against some like me who maintain that the Canadian state has been tolerating, just like the Pakistani deep state, the rise of religious extremism directed against Hindus? Will the ecosystem continue to deny the bogey of Hindu phobia? And most importantly, when will Hindus realize that no one will speak for them till they learn to be heard as one? As one, viewers. Let's open this up. Let's ask some fundamental questions tonight. I have taken you through an elaborate introduction to establish the facts so no one can accuse me, viewers, of misleading the public. I've told you as I've seen it. Daniel Boardman, Canadian journalist, is here with us. He tweeted these pictures. First off, they went completely viral, almost 1 million views on these pictures, where you can clearly see the Canadian police attacking the victims and not restraining the Khalistani thugs. Now, I have to ask you, Daniel, what did you make of this footage? Yes, you've tweeted it, but why did you tweet it? When you watched this footage, what were the thoughts that ran through your mind? What did you make of it?
I mean, the pictures that I saw and put out, it shows that Canada is nowhere near as safe as it should be for the Hindu community. It's sort of open season. the Khalistanis have learned that they can attack Hindus, and then when they attack Hindus, they won't be called out for it. So the message that is being sent is more and more chaos, and this is the message that's been sent consistently over the last year or so in Canada is mob rule, and the more violent your mob, the more rules you get to dictate.
But I'm not saying this, viewers. A Toronto-based journalist, Daniel Boardman, is saying this, that Hindus are not safe. And therefore, I want to bring in Hamid Khan, who has spoken out in favor of the Trudeau government in the past. And I also want to bring in Dr. Ranganathan right after that. Now, Hamid Khan, I need to ask you this question. This footage clearly tells us there's a problem. Hindus are not treated as equal citizens in Canada. There is an institutionalized bias. Otherwise, you won't be seeing pictures like this.
I don't think so. That is the true picture. I believe that since Trudeau have shown the real face of Indian fascist government, who's targeting terrorism across the world, including Canada, America, and Pakistan is the one who is suffering Indian terrorism for many decades. I think this is the time for Indian government to realize that terrorism on other soils and state-sponsored terrorism, they have to stop. And the Khalistan movement is a reality. And sooner or later, there will be an establishment of independent Khalistan, independent Kashmir.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a counter question? You're so pro-Khalistan, right? You want to establish this state. Do you know that East Punjab is in India, but West Punjab with Lahore as its capital is in Pakistan? Would you like that part of Punjab to be also Khalistan? No, I want you to answer this question tonight. Be honest. Be honest.
I am from Lahore.
You tell me, should that be Khalistan, yes or no, Mr. Hamid Khan?
No, the only reason is...
No, the only reason is, viewers, the only reason is this man is a bigot. That's the only reason. I want to ask you a question. I'll ask you this question. What is the difference between, East Punjab and West Punjab?
No, let me answer my question.
What do you want to answer?
You asked me.
Sikhs were not thrown out? Didn't the great Sikh ruler rule out of Lahore? Yes or no?
I will reply.
What will you reply, my dear friend? What will you reply?
The Sikhs living in India are facing atrocities by Indian government, BJP, and everyone.
I see. And the Sikhs that are not living anymore in Pakistan. Do you know the population of Sikhs in Pakistan today? Do you know where those Sikhs are, sir? They are in India. Either they have been converted or they have fled.
I have my friends in media who are Sikhs. Harmeet Singh is one of the biggest examples, who's working for a top journalist media houses in Pakistan.
Do you know, sir, that Sikhs in my country, don't try to play this card here, Mr. Hamid Khan.
I am trying
do
to
not be an apologist for terrorists. Pakistanis, whether they are living in a certain tribe of Pakistanis living, whether they are living in Canada or the United States, still dream about viewers Islamic root.
Let me conclude.
You don't need to conclude. You exposed yourself. So Pakistan, hang on. So Pakistan will not accept Khalistan out of Western Punjab, but where Lahore is the capital, which was the institutionalized capital, viewers, of the greatest Sikh warrior, Maharaja Ranjit Singh.
Amritsar was capital.
He ruled out of that.
Will be the capital of Khalistan.
Okay. One second. Let me bring in Dr. Ranganathan, a fellow Canadian, Daniel Boardman. Just 1 second, Mr. Khan, relax. I've heard you, sir. You've said what you had to say. You've said your piece. You've said your piece. I've heard you.
If you want me to say, let me complete. Otherwise, there is no point.
I've heard you.
There is no point.
I have heard you. If you're not going to answer my question, it's fine. I'll lower your fader. Please don't keep talking over me. I don't like it. I've asked you the question. You've given me your answer. I've heard it. I want to bring the others. 1 second. Dr. Ranganathan, let's bring you into this conversation. What do you make of this response that you just heard from Hamid Khan?
Good evening, Rahul. I don't need to say anything much, except that if you were to ask him, take 10 seconds of my time and ask him if Nasrallah was a terrorist, I would, venture to guess what his response is going to be.
I can't hear you. Nasrallah a terrorist?
Kulbhushan Yadav a terrorist.
Kulbhushan Yadav? I'm asking you, is Nasrallah a terrorist?
No, I'm asking you first. Answer my question.
No, sir,
If
he's
you
a
want to
victim of
answer that-
Pakistani. He's a victim of Pakistani terror.
No, he is
He
a
was
terrorist
kidnapped.
who has
He was
killed
no.
many innocent.
Have you seen what the
Kulbhushan Yadav
ICJ
is a
has had to
terrorist
say?
who is involved
Have you
in
seen the
bombing in
ICJ? Do you believe
Pakistan?
in the ICJ, the Indian court, the International Court of Justice? Do you believe in it?
Yes, International
But then,
Court of
then
Justice
please look up.
upheld the
You
decision.
take 30
ICJ
seconds
upheld
and
the
Google.
decision of-
I'm sorry, they didn't, sir.
No,
They didn't.
no.
One second, wait.
No.
Let me just
I
bring in
think-
Dr.
I think
Ranganathan
you are
on
wrong.
this.
No,
Let's not.
I think you need to read the decision of ICJ
Right,
as
right.
well.
Sir, please
You need
read
to
it
go through
yourself.
the decision.
Please quote it. I'm waiting for you to come back. Please do a Google. You're a master at that. Yes,
No,
Dr. Ranganathan.
I am just saying that Kulbhushan
Yeah.
Yadav is the classic example of cross-border terrorism. That is my answer.
He refuses to accept or not whether Nasrallah is a terrorist. This coward doesn't even.
Nasrallah is not a terrorist.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Because you need
Yeah.
to have the proof to prove someone is a terrorist, like Pakistan
Right.
have proven Kulbhushan Yadav in the court.
He's
In the
already.
court of justice, Pakistan have proven Kulbhushan Yadav as a terrorist.
Let me
can
tell you,
keep
viewers,
naming
here
everybody.
is the Kulbhushan Jadhav verdict.
I-
One second. 1 second. International Court of Justice rejected the contention of Pakistan that India did not lend any help in criminal investigations against Kulbhushan Jadhav, and also that India denied Jadhav as their citizen, and therefore the right to consular access is out of question. They gave Pakistan a complete drubbing. Viewers,
No.
that's the.
I
So if
think
you don't
the
want to
right
believe
of-
me,
right to
if you
access
don't,
to
if you
the
don't,
consul, Pakistan gave the right to access
what?
to the
I'm
consul.
sorry, sir. The ICJ didn't think so. It thought that you were acting in a way, in a manner that was against international law. Now, 1 minute. Now, just keep quiet because you don't know your facts. You come on to this show without your facts.
How, you
Lord is
don't
fair.
know the
Yes,
reality.
doctor.
You don't know the reality.
Right. I don't know anything. I'm only
By-
quoting the ICJ. Yeah.
By
I
this,
am giving
this
you the
man's
verdict of
logic,
ICJ.
by this man's logic that you would have to be proclaimed as a terrorist by a court, I again wish to waste 10 seconds of my precious time and ask him if Osama bin Laden was a terrorist because he's never
Actually,
been.
there's no point. There's no point, Dr. Ranganathan, engaging this man and giving him more airtime because obviously he's exposed himself as a bigot. Can you believe it, viewers? On international
No, it's not about
TV,
bigot.
this
No,
man
not
thinks
at all.
Osama bin Laden is some farishta. I mean,
No, I'm not saying that.
all right, what
I'm
is it?
just saying.
What
I
is
am just
was
saying-
Osama bin Laden a terrorist? Yes or no?
Are we talking about Osama bin Laden? Are we talking about Kulbhushan?
I'm asking
Are we
you.
talking about
Yes,
Osama bin Laden, was he a terrorist? Yes or
I mean,
no?
you keep throwing the name.
I'm
I will
asking
not-
you, is Osama bin Laden a terrorist?
Anybody who killed innocent people is a terrorist.
Okay,
I agree.
so Nasrallah is a terrorist?
No, he has not proven that he is
Oh,
involved.
he's not
That's
proven
all
that
I'm
he was
saying.
not involved. Okay. Nasrallah,
That's what
viewers,
I'm saying.
if you remember, has issued statements after statements and
No,
actually apologized. No, hang on 1 second. Has actually apologized in front of the international community. Viewers.
No, let me
Okay.
tell you one thing. Are you talking? Let me tell you one. If
No,
you're
I'm not talking about
Hassan
anything.
Nasrallah,
You know, you're just
are you
eating up a
talking
lot
about
of
Hassan
airtime. 1 second. Mr.
No.
Khan, let me tell you. Mr. Nasrallah is an apologist for the
Show me his
terror
apology.
of
Show me his
Hezbollah.
apology.
He welcomed the terror attack on Israel, viewers, where
Look,
viewers, 250 people were kidnapped, more than 1,000 were killed. Some of them were
Okay, is
babies.
Netanyahu a terrorist?
No, 1 second. In their
Is Netanyahu a terrorist?
1 second. In their
answer my
cribs.
question.
In their cribs.
42,000 people he
1
has killed.
second, 1
Is
second.
Netanyahu a terrorist?
Listen, I don't want to
He's not
listen,
doing
Mr.
genocide.
Khan. You're clearly a bigot who has no
it's
sense
not about
of
bigot. It's about-
context.
You
You have
don't
no
want to
sense
answer
of
my
context,
question,
and
you
you
are
don't
behaving
have a
bigot.
human beating heart. Dr. Ranganathan,
No.
yes, make your point
You
now,
don't have
please.
a human beating
Yes.
heart if you cannot condemn Netanyahu.
Can you please
Can you
shade this
condemn
guy?
Netanyahu?
We've had enough of this terror apologist rants. Thank you. Rahul, I have 3 points to make, and I'll make them briefly because a lot of my time has gone into this man's kitty. Look, and all 3 are very important. The first is, of course, the shocking attack on Hindu temple in Canada by a mob. There is no other way to describe it. Rampaging Khalistanis, aided and abetted by Canadian police, cushioned and coerced by Canadian politicians, must be strongly condemned. Let us not shy away from the fact that Hindus are being targeted around the world, Rahul. This is the price they have to pay for their tolerance. From Leicester to Toronto to Dhaka to Melbourne to Palermo, There have been hundreds of Hindu-phobic attacks. The fate of Hindus, I'm afraid, is sealed. But what is happening to this peaceful, hardworking, affluent, law-abiding community abroad is appalling. And what is happening to it in Canada is especially vile, because it is being deliberately stoked by political motives. And the man stoking it is none other than Trudeau. Did you notice how he deliberately omitted mentioning in his tweet the perpetrators of this attack, the kind of flags they were carrying? Which brings me to point number 2. I repeat, the only thing lower than Trudeau's credibility is his intelligence. He has ruined Canada's relationship with India, possibly for years, if not for decades to come. And for what? For minuscule gains in Canadian electoral politics. Trudeau, just like his father did 3 decades ago, is kowtowing to Khalistani terrorists just to placate the increasingly influential vote bank. Earlier, he had displayed his ignorance when he supported the anti-farm reform protest just to placate his Khalistani vote bank. Even Rahul, can you please mute this idiot?
Mr. Khan, no one disturbed you. Please, I'll lower your fader. I'm counting till 3. 1, 2, 3. Lower his fader. I'll come back to you. I'll give you your time. But please don't speak over others. Yes, Dr. Anand.
Yes, the fact is Trudeau is doing absolutely nothing to fund the secessionist groups in Canada who want to foment trouble in India. The attack on our temples, embassies, making of kill lists, the grisly tableau showing Khalistanis gunning down our ex-prime minister. And what does Trudeau do? Absolutely nothing. And now he's panicking because his party has lost important by-elections in Montreal. 20 of his MPs have asked him to step down. His alliance partner Jagmeet is no longer with him. Separatists in Quebec are firming up for a revolution of sorts. He is going to lose the upcoming election. Finally, and this is important, Rahul, please give me a minute to point number 3. The attack on Hindu temples is a deliberate attempt by Pakistan and its Khalistani puppets to drive a wedge between Sikhs and Hindus. But their nefarious designs will never ever succeed. To know why, I need to show you 3 images. The first is this territory under Maharaja Ranjit Singh. See how it encompasses almost half of Pakistan. Now, image number 2. Look at the map proposed by Khalistanis. Not an inch of Pakistani territory is included. What more proof do you need that these turnips are aided and abetted by Pakistan to break up India and divide Hindus and Sikhs? But they will never succeed because Hindus and Sikhs have always been one. The 11 gurus are my gurus, Rahul, as much as they are gurus of the Sikhs. As someone said, if you removed Hinduism from Guru Granth Sahib, only the book spine will remain. Sikhism is the sword of Sanatan. Sikhi was born to defend Hindus because Sikhi was defended by Hindu gods. Here is the proof. The third image. This is the flag of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. What do you see? Goddess Durga in the middle, flanked by Lord Hanuman and Bhairav. Rahul, just 10 seconds. I am as much a Hindu as I am a Sikh. Batenge to katenge.
Well, viewers, you heard Dr. Ranganathan there. We also have someone who has been targeted by mobs, Khalistani mobs. I'll come to him. That's the reality. You'll hear it from him. And you'll also hear in just a few moments from someone who was there on the spot. At 9:30, you'll join us. But Mr. Faulkner, let me bring you in here. And I want to ask you this question. How many Pakistani diplomats have you thrown out of your country for squeezing the human rights of Sikhs, of other Muslims, minority Muslims, and Hindus? How many have you questioned? Since you speak about human rights all over the world and you're so interested in upholding Sikh rights here in India. Can you answer me this, Mr. Faulkner?
I can't answer that question because I don't know the answer to it. But what I can say is that the attacks that we saw yesterday outside of the Hindu temple, I believe, are the result of four concrete reasons why we're starting to see this issue taking place more often. The first, it appears, is because the Indian government believes it can police its diaspora population around the world, the same way that the Chinese government does, the same way the Iranian government does. They believe that if they have an issue with an Indian national that lives or is a citizen of a foreign country, they can police that and they can even go and potentially kill that citizen. That is one thing that I think is, quite frankly, undisputable if you read the FBI indictment. that was released a couple of weeks ago. The second reason that we're starting to see this issue is because the people, I would call it a very vocal and significant minority of Indian immigrants that have come to Canada over the past 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer, since Justin Trudeau came to office, behave in a way that is not Canadian. The people, I'm calling it a minority here, they do not respect our Canadian values and our Canadian way of life, regardless of their religion. If they are Sikh, if they are Khalistani, if they are Hindu, if they are Indian nationalist. In our country, we have religious tolerance. We do not cause fights and violence outside of religious areas. It's not just the Indian population that we're seeing. It's also many of these Palestinian supporters who decided to go and attack a synagogue recently. This is un-Canadian. This is not Canadian behavior. And not only is it just this religious issue, we're seeing many recent Indian immigrants into our country openly abuse Canadian law enforcement officers and commit crimes at a significant rate. The third reason we're seeing this is because Justin Trudeau has opened up our borders to millions of people, especially over the past 3 or 4 years, a large number of them from India. Indian problems are becoming Canadian issues. And frankly, the majority of Canadians don't care about this. They don't take a side over the other. It's not a concern to them. Okay. And lastly, the Khalistan movement, I will just say the Khalistan movement is deeply embedded in Canadian politics. We're seeing that here. We've known this issue for a long time. That's why politicians are refusing to call out Khalistanis. They're emboldened. They're clearly very upset. And those are the reasons why I think we're seeing this.
Okay, so Mr. Faulkner, can I ask you 3 quick questions?
Sure.
You said that the Indian government thinks that it can police its diaspora and that it thinks it can go into another country and kill citizens of that country. That's what you said. Right. Because they perceive them to be a threat to Indian interests. That's what you said, right?
That's not just what I said. That's what the
That's
FBI
right. So
and the
you do admit that you said that. Did Canada support Israel going into Lebanon? Did Canada support the taking down of Osama bin Laden? Yes or no?
Israel's in a war.
I'm asking you a question. Yes or no?
Is in a war against
yes or no, Mr. Faulkner? Yes or no?
Yes, the answer is yes. Because
yes, the answer is yes. So Canada thinks it can police the world, viewers.
No,
that
it
can
not.
Kill. No, hang on.
No, it
that it
not.
can kill Mr. Hang on. It can kill Mr. Khan's idol. It can kill Mr. Khan's freedom fighter. And this is Mr. Khan sitting there in Canada. You support Mr. Faulkner? I suppose you do now, because your bread is buttered on the other side. I understand, Mr. Khan.
No.
He says, hang on. You said that we don't like people who behave in a way that is not in tune with Canadian values, Mr. Faulkner. And there's a minority that comes into this country, right? And they come in and they hold up various individuals. There are even people, please lower his fader. There are also people who support anti-Semitism, which you have a problem with. That's what you said, Mr. Faulkner. Yes or no?
Absolutely, I have a problem with that. Yes.
Right. The Canadian Parliament, viewers, the Canadian Parliament honored a Hitler-supporting Nazi veteran. Can you believe that? He hasn't read his own unbiased account of his own international history and the history of his own political class. He's just an apologist for Trudeau. But that's okay.
If you want to link Najjar to Osama bin Laden,
it's okay. It's okay. I completely understand. It's okay. The world will be a safer place if we all agree, viewers, that terrorists belong 6 feet under. But obviously we can't, because certain politicians, and Mr. Faulkner, to his credit, says in the end that, oh, well, you see, the Khalistan movement is deeply entrenched in the political, at this moment, milieu of Canada. So he acknowledges that all this is happening because of this. Now he says, viewers, that you see, we don't like people talking about various things like state breakup, etc., etc. I would want to ask Mr. Faulkner, do you support the Quebecois movement, sir?
No, I do not.
No, you
however,
do not.
The Quebec movement is Canadian.
He doesn't like Quebec separatists, but he doesn't mind them on his soil when they talk about Khalistan. You see, viewers, these people have not read History 101, and they're on hard facts tonight.
Rahul, please stop. You have completely destroyed him. This is an exhibition to Indian parents to not send their kids to Canada to study, because they are seeing right now Harrison Faulkner being a student of Canadian education system. This guy believes there are two kinds of terrorists. He is himself saying, if you believe Niger is a terrorist and Osama bin Laden, what the hell? Who is he to decide who's a terrorist or not? So somebody who kills 10 people is not a terrorist. Somebody who kills 3,000 is? Where did you get education from, Faulkner? And for your benefit, let me tell you, Niger is not an Indian citizen. India is not taking care of its diaspora. Niger is an American, I beg your pardon, Canadian citizen. Just like you have Irish ancestry, I suppose, Faulkner, but you are a Canadian citizen. So if somebody wants to target you, doesn't mean that he's targeting Irishmen. What? I mean, but thank you, Rahul, for exposing this guy.
No, look, it's my job to put the facts out there. I'm not sitting, I don't have anything personal against Mr. Faulkner. You just have to be prepared, that's all. But 1 second, let me bring in Mr. Deepak Punj and Daniel Boardman once again. Daniel Boardman, you've heard the panel. Why do Hindus not feel safe in Canada? Maybe you can educate your fellow citizens, Mr. Khan and Mr. Faulkner.
I'd say because their temples were just attacked in broad daylight, and no one in the political establishment or in the police or security establishment had the ability to determine victim from perpetrator. They played up the narrative of just two communities clashing. That's a classic narrative. When you want to back an extremist side, you say sides clashed, right? So if there's like a suicide bomber in Jerusalem, you go, oh, 7 Israelis dead, 1 Palestinian dead in clashes in Jerusalem, which doesn't tell you that someone strapped a bomb on their vest and killed people. It was a clash. And this is the narrative we did in Canada, where Khalistanis attack a Hindu temple, and it was communities clash, right? Not Khalistanis attack Hindus.
Okay. Well, Mr. Punj, let me come to you. You have been attacked, and I also want us to go across to Mahinder Bhandari in just a few moments. He's waiting for us. But Mr. Punj, tell me, you were attacked by a K mob. Were you sitting there and basically raging against the Canadian political ethos? Were you being a bad citizen that you got beaten up by these Khalistani mobs?
Rahul, the fact is the whole Canadian system has been hijacked by these Khalistani people. It's the police, politicians. They know how to make fake votes and win nominations and then become MPs. Out of 26 MPs, 25 MPs are Sikhs, and they are mostly, they back up Khalistan, and they are anti-India. The only thing they need is Lal Bati when they go to India, and they just need police gypsies in front of them. That's all they need. But the thing is, it's been hijacked by the whole system, has been hijacked by them. And one more important point I want to raise here: if you see Khalistani flags yesterday, you can see American flag with them. That means USA is also backing them up. And regarding attack on me, I was going to my radio studio, and inside the radio studio, they did the Reiki and stuff like that. There was no cameras near the staircase. And there were 3 people, and they told me that I did a talk show on Deep Sidhu and Khalistan. That's why they are here. One of them was filming the whole incident. One had a handgun, and the other had a beer bottle. He just put that beer bottle up.
Were they arrested? Mr. Punj, were they arrested? Were they arrested? Was action taken?
Nobody was arrested. Nobody was arrested. Even when I called them. When I email the police, I get no answer, and they were just faking so much, because next day in my studio there were almost 200 people waiting for me to back me up.
So you have no freedom of expression in Canada, but the Khalistanis do. The Khalistanis can parade floats of terrorists and eulogize them and claim that Khalistan should exist. Of course, it should not borrow anything from Pakistan, because Khan Sahib will get very upset. But nonetheless, let me just bring in Mr. Boardman once again. Mr. Boardman, how deeply? Now, I can only assume that Mr. Punj did not get justice because the Khalistan's apparatus there and the Canadian state under Trudeau are deeply enmeshed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Boardman.
I mean, Justin Trudeau is very, very deeply embedded with it. We know from Ursula Assange's statements via 2008, 2011 that he was fully embedded with the Khalistani ideology. If you look at his cabinet choices since 2015, many of them were pretty much open Khalistanis. He still continues to promote people who promote the Khalistani ideology. He went into a sort of a political marriage with Jagmeet Singh, who is again a Khalistani. And at no point has the Canadian establishment ever taken any anti-Khalistani measures. In fact, Justin Trudeau removed the Khalistanis from the terrorism watch list once he got in. So there's never been any action taken against this group in the last 10 years.
No action taken. Mr. Faulkner, let me bring you back in. And I have to ask you this question because, can we go back to Mr. Faulkner, please? Yeah, thank you. Mr. Faulkner, if you can hear me.
Yep.
I just have to ask you this question because as a student of international affairs, I need to understand how you view this. And I think Dr. Ranganathan is also there with us. And it'd be interesting to hear your point of view, Mr. Faulkner. Look, I have nothing personal against you, but imagine that the United States tomorrow started supporting the cause of Quebec, or started saying to a large number of those who support the cause of Quebec separation from Canada, and said, look, they're fine, they're okay, we'll harbor them on our soil, they can live around the Great Lakes on our side of the border, and they can export all sorts of weapons, etc., and they can also, muzzle anybody who basically disagrees with them. How would the Canadian government, how would Trudeau react?
Well, in this hypothetical, the Trudeau government would react in a, first of all, let me just say this. I would expect the United States to say that American citizens cannot be killed on American soil. Mm-hmm. Consistency. The Canadian government will be upset about this, and that's an issue. But actually, the Quebec separatists are not really, you can't really compare the two. You asked me if I support the Quebec separatist movement. Well, I'll tell you this, I respect their right to advocate for whatever cause they want, because in our country we have free speech. We allow this.
No, I'm not talking about your country. I'm talking about your ally, America, if hypothetically decided that it would allow armed thugs of the Quebec movement, just like British, the UK and America had a problem because America was giving support to the IRA. Now, you tell me, if the reverse was happening, if the United States was giving shelter to Quebecers, armed separatists, how would Canada react? It's a simple question. Would it not be upset? I'm sure it'll be upset.
Oh, it would be upset.
Would be very
but
upset.
I can tell you the Canadian government would not be sending hit squads.
I'll tell you now,
into
viewers,
the United States.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why there's a problem with this response. And Dr. Ranganathan is listening in, and he knows the facts that Mr. Faulkner is either not aware of or he's glossing over. India sent multiple requests. 26 at last count. Requests to the Canadian government to say, look, there are certain individuals who, by the way, viewers, the Canadians themselves didn't want to give Niger citizenship. He was denied 4 times. But somehow... yes. And why was he denied, Dr. Ranganathan? Can you illuminate Mr. Faulkner, or spin Dr. Mr. Faulkner? Yes.
No, there's nothing against Mr. Faulkner. I mean, he carries a name of a very famous, my favorite novelist. But look, the fact is, Harrison himself knows he is propagating right now 2 standards. So common sense dictates a terrorist is a terrorist. I mean, the so-called adage of, social suppose that someone's terrorist, another person's freedom fighter. No, the very fact that you are judging who is a terrorist is problematic, because the fact of the matter is Niger was not judged to be a problem by India. First of all, he's a Canadian citizen. He was put on no-fly list. He started terror organization. He's been involved in assassinations and bombings. That's Niger for you. Panun is worse. And for you to say we enjoy freedom of right and expression, I'm sorry. Did America, who has the same level of freedom of expression as Canada does, did it not arrest a lady for supporting Palestinian and, just intimidating by way of words? So don't give me that gibberish about, that words are different from physical violence. Of course they are, but you prosecute words as well. Let's not have double standards out here, for heaven's sake.
Okay, Mr. Bhandari, let me bring you in. We've been waiting for you. Thank you for joining us. What happened to you today? You were there.
Actually, yesterday,
Yeah.
see, yesterday morning, we got a call from some of the devotees that there is some Khalistani reporters, those agitators are there, and they are giving slogans against anti-Hindu, anti-India, and they are getting violent, and some police people are there. So we went there. By the time we reached, we saw lots of the police people have come gathered there, and Khalistanis, they broke the, there is a set boundary, the temple boundary. So this side was a protest which was on the road. They crossed that border, they entered the temple, they started beating up the devotees who were giving a counter slogan against their slogans. They started beating up. There was a video recording. We started taking the videos. They started beating them with the sticks. They thrown some sticks, and they become so daring and so aggressive, which I have never
But
seen.
the
in
police
last 20
didn't
years.
support you, Mr. Bhandari.
Actually, how police supported? Okay, let me give you the example. Police were supporting them. Okay, police were supporting them. They had actually, and that is all video. One police guy, actually 3 police people, we have noted the badge. They have, in fact, without any, provocating
Provocation.
them, one police guy, his badge number, everything I shared with you people, he crossed the police border. He attacked the Hindu. He started beating him so badly, and then 2 policemen also started beating up the Hindus devotees with the sticks, and all was video recorded. We have taken the pictures of those policemen doing all those assault, and now we got 3 tweets, and we have got the information. In that tweet, they said that police was pre-planned, given directions to get involved and support the Khalistanis.
Well,
some policemen in the plain clothes were holding Khalistani flags. I've shared you all the tweets, and from the tweets, I'm saying this thing because the guy has done his research. He has also shared the batch number. He also shared name of the policeman who was supposedly Khalistani supporter.
So has any action been taken against these police people?
This is what is our cause. We had a huge marathon meetings yesterday. There was a huge protest yesterday.
I know, but has any action been taken?
Nothing has been taken. Actually,
viewers,
in fact,
what does that tell you?
Sir, one thing I want to. In fact, in British Columbia study, they arrested 3 Hindus without any provocation. They just saw some Hindus in a room. They just attacked him, just dumped him on the ground, and they attacked him.
Conflicting reports. I have to add here, Mr. Bhandari, conflicting reports are coming in of the arrests and the numbers, etc., etc. Yes, Dr. Ranganathan. Finally, let me then move on. Yes.
I cannot see your picture, by the way. I can't see you on the video.
Okay. Dr. Ranganathan, yes.
Now, within the last hour, I must thank our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, for tweeting on this. Spine always grows in the back that is against the wall. And for too long, we've been providing this huge kilometers-long rope to Canada. Not anymore. So thank you, Prime Minister, for tweeting about this.
But viewers, at the end of the day, as I began by saying, Hindus are never taken seriously because they're never heard. No one ever comes to rescue them because they're never heard. And they're never heard because they seldom speak as one. This should be a lesson to Hindus both in this country and abroad. Speak as one. I want to move on, viewers. The curtain is about to go up on one of the most closely contested US elections in recent history. In just a few hours, the world will know whether Trump returns to office after 4 years or if America will elect Kamala Harris, its first woman president in history, and that too of Indian origin. And in close elections, let me tell you, it's the margins that matter, and it won't surprise you to know that in 2020, the Indian American community played a pivotal part in at least 5 states where their population exceeded the winning vote margin. And I'll pull those graphics up for you on the screens, viewers. These 5 states where the Indian community had more numbers than the winning margin were Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And it appears that in an election where both the contestants, Trump and Kamala Harris, are tied almost to the last decimal point, depending on which poll you look at. And all the results are in that margin ±3 standard margin of statistical error. It will be the Indian community that might tip the balance. Again, is that a fact? Let's go straight across to some people who understand, who know this. We're also going to be joined by Shalabh Kumar and Zaka Jacob. Zaka, sorry to keep you waiting. We just got a bit stretched in the last conversation, but just wanted to ask you this. The Indian community, I suppose, has a bit of a dilemma on its hand. Here you have somebody who professes great love for India, Trump and Hindus, and you've heard him speak and he recently tweeted. And on the other hand, you have Kamala Harris, who's of Indian origin. And this is a golden opportunity to put someone of Indian origin in the White House.
So you're right, Rahul. I think it's a difficult choice for the Indian American community. There are about 2.5 million of them who are U.S. citizens who are eligible to vote. And there's, of course, about 2 million of them who are essentially H-1B visa holders who are here on work, on green card, and so on, who are not eligible to vote. But I think just like we're seeing in all other communities, whether it's the African American community, the Hispanic American community, the Indian American community too is divided. This is a community which has been sort of very largely Democratic favoring over the years. They voted in big numbers for Obama. They voted in big numbers for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, of course, the Clintons have a long association with India. And in this election, they are divided because a good number of them are supporting Trump for the same issues that other communities in America seem to be supporting him, which is one, the economy. Ordinary Americans are feeling the pinch of grocery bills, of high fuel prices, just the cost of living expenses going up manifold in the last 4 years. They're also worried about the wars and the knock-on effect that the wars are having on the economy here in the US. So they're worried about those things. Right. And some of those people in the Indian American community want to back Trump. But there's also the history of the 4 years that Trump was president. And I distinctly remember on the H-1B visa issue, Trump took a very strident anti-H-1B position, particularly on those who are dependent on their spouses for staying on in the United States. He stopped them from working. That was overturned by the Biden-Harris administration. So that could be, again, a swing issue for many in the Indian American community. Right. Ultimately, this community too, just like I said, has been divided like all other communities. Let me
bring in someone
easily the closely fought election.
Okay, just stay on with me. Let me bring in someone who has played a pivotal role to galvanize American Hindus for Trump. And we are joined by Shalabh Kumar. Shalabh Kumar, how split is the Indian community, if at all? What do you think?
Well, our people are smart enough to realize that Kamala is a Hindu and Indian name only. She has been opposed to the Hindu and Indian interests. She has been opposed to Prime Minister Modi. She has been very critical of him in the past when the Article 370 and 35 were repealed. She is surrounded by advisors that are pro-Pakistani. They want Azad Kashmir, as they call it, and so she became, let's say, a little bit Indian just maybe a week ago.
Okay, a week ago,
and particularly after the Diwali tweet by President Trump. And other than that, she has never considered herself to be a Hindu and Indian American. She's always described herself as a Black American. So having just a name Kamala is not going to make the difference.
Okay, so let me ask you, because you talk about Article 370 and 35A, that happened in 2019. In 2020, she was a running mate for Biden. Yet the Indian community, and the numbers are there right before you. In fact, we've just put them out on the screens, did vote for her. And of course, Mr. Biden by extension. despite the fact that there was the big howdy Modi, Trump, bonhomie and all of that, there was a big bump that Mr. Trump got. Why was that then the case?
Because at that time it was Joe Biden who was a little more moderate, but Kamala's positions are a lot stronger against not just the Hindu and Indian American interest, but also she is way to the left. People have to be reminded where she grew up. Her father, Donald Harris, is a Marxist. Her mother, Shamla, was a communist sympathizer and a socialist. Particularly the voters in the Hindu and Indian American community realized what a socialist India did from 1947 to 1991 when growth was pitiful, and what happened to Indian economy after 1991. Reforms were made, and India.
Look, I mean, I understand that these factors will play a role, but let me just bring in Zaka once more. Zaka, do you see the Indian community voting as a monolith this time, or is that sort of overemphasized?
No, I think the community is divided, no doubt about it, just like every other community. Last time, too, I mean, people were talking about, a lot of people in the Indian community will vote for Trump, because of the Howdy Modi event. I think there's very little evidence to show that, at least in the 2020 election. A bulk of the Indian community voted for the Democrats. And that's because historically, the Indian community has been aligned with the Democrats. This time around, and I think even on the issue of immigration, the Indian community is all for legal immigration. The Trump campaign has made illegal immigration one of the number one issues in this campaign, and that is resonant with some folks in the Indian community, because the Indian community feels the reason why the political establishment, particularly the Republican establishment, has gone so hard on illegal immigration is actually costing legal immigration by Indians as well. Right. So I think there are some folks to whom that message resonates. Whether that actually moves the needle in terms of numbers, we'll have to wait and see. I just think I just feel like a larger number of Indian Americans will still vote Democrat because of historical reasons, because of their slightly more lenient posture when it comes to immigration. And like I said, they're just better organized at the Indian American community than the Republicans are. Some of them will vote for Trump, but that's just a Trump vote.
Okay. Well, viewers, I said less than 12 hours. In fact, at this time tomorrow, the American election will be well underway. People will be voting. And Zaka Jacob and the rest of us here will get you minute-to-minute updates. We leave it at this. Thank you for watching.
It has to do with a little bit of intelligence. And I have a piece of glass over here, and I don't have a piece of glass there. And I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much, because I don't mind that. So I have a piece of glass here. And the problem with that glass is I don't look great on television when you have a 4-inch piece of glass that a howitzer can't go through. No, when you see yourself on television, you say, boy, you're really not very recognizable, to be honest with you, which is good. But here's the problem. So I have glass here, I have glass here. Now, I'm not worried about this. Look, what do I have? A couple of people, and they're friends, generally. There are a couple of people I don't like in that group, but that's like, no, but look at it. Look at it. I have nobody here. What do I need this piece? But where I think I do need a piece is here. What the hell do I know? I must be wrong. I must be wrong. Probably it was probably Biden or the other one that said, screw him, don't give him the glass. Oh, you don't think? Let me tell you, I'll tell you what. Secret Service guys were very brave when I got shot. They stood right in the line of fire. And I don't want to speak out of school, but I can say from the time I got elected, these guys were fighting for more help, for more people like you have up there, great people, but they were fighting for more, 11 times or so. They said, no, that's not right. That's not right. You know, they weren't supposed to do that too, by the way.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Vantage. We are coming to you live from the White House. Behind me, you can see the presidential mansion. This is what it's all about, the biggest prize in American politics. Come January, and it will have a new president. Will it be Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? That's what we're here to find out. Now, this part of the White House is called the North Lawn. It has a very special place in presidential traditions. When a state guest arrives at the White House, this is where the ceremonial welcome happens. It's usually packed on those days, but even now there's a buzz around here, a feeling of tension and fervor. We expect that to increase in the next hour or two because President Biden is heading back here. He's in his hometown right now. He's not at the White House, but in the next hour or two, he's expected to be back. Like all Americans, he will be glued to the television tomorrow because Tuesday is the big election day, the day of voting. Technically, we can have a winner by tomorrow night, but a lot of Americans voted early this time. They sent in mail-in ballots and postal votes. So it could take a bit longer. But don't worry, we'll be right here throughout the week covering the results. So make sure you tune in every day. We've got a packed show lined up for you tonight. We're looking at how Washington is preparing for Election Day, what sort of security measures are in place. And we also attended a women's march yesterday. We'll tell you what women voters are looking for this time and who is leading the merchandise race. From Trump hats to Harris badges, it's all being sold in Washington and across the country indeed. And what does it say about the ground sentiment? All this and more lined up for you. First, the headlines. China continues its saber rattling. Taiwan detects 44 aircraft, 6 Navy vessels, and 1 ship from Beijing around it. Many of these jets reportedly crossed the median line of Taiwan Strait. This incident comes amid escalating regional tensions as Beijing ups its ante over the self-ruled island. Turkey sacks 3 mayors in the Kurdish majority southeast on alleged terrorism charges. This is despite Ankara's efforts to seek a rapprochement with the Kurdish community. All 3 mayors belong to the main pro-Kurdish party. Kurds make up around 20% of Turkey's overall population. Chaos in the newly elected Jammu and Kashmir Assembly on its first day after a People's Democratic Party leader moved a resolution against the scrapping of Article 370. This led to BJP lawmakers protesting against the move. In 2019, Jammu and Kashmir lost its special status and was bifurcated into 2 union territories. The European Union welcomes the re-election of Moldova's pro-European president. She won in a tense vote on Sunday. The election was overshadowed by allegations of Russian meddling. It took place just 2 weeks after a referendum in which Moldovans voted by a razor-thin margin to back joining the EU. And a volcano erupts in eastern Indonesia, killing at least 10 people and spewing fireballs and ash on surrounding villages. Some wooden homes even caught fire. Several people have been evacuated. Indonesia experiences frequent volcanic eruptions due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's the final stretch here in the United States. Less than 48 hours left until polls close, until a new president is elected. Americans will be lining up to vote at polling booths tomorrow. but a lot of them have already voted. More than 77 million of them. How? Through early voting. Here in America, you can request a ballot on mail. You can then fill it up, select your candidate, and then drop it off in ballot boxes or even mail them via postal services. More than 77 million Americans have done it so far. That's around 48% of the total turnout in the last election. They've already voted. So clearly, early voting is the future. In 2020, the Democrats dominated this field, but this time, Republicans have caught up, mainly because Donald Trump has changed his position on this. Last time, he opposed early voting. This time, he's supporting it. Around 38% of early voting has been done by the Democrats, and Republicans are at 36.2%. So the gap is pretty narrow. Now we come to the opinion polls. Who is leading and by how much? Well, Harris has a narrow edge over Trump in the national polls. But like we've said, that doesn't really matter. It comes down to the Electoral College, to the swing states, the 7 swing states. Let's look at the situation there. Harris is leading in Nevada by 3 points. She's leading in North Carolina by 2 points, in Wisconsin by 2 points, and in Georgia by 1 point. In Pennsylvania and Michigan, things are even, and in Arizona, Trump leads by 4 points. Now, these numbers make a couple of things quite clear. One, Harris has found some momentum, some new momentum. Apparently, last-minute undecided voters are picking her. And two, Donald Trump is also consolidating. Harris may hold the edge among early voters, but on Tuesday, it's all about in-person voting. And that remains Donald Trump's core, which brings us to the campaigns. Both Harris and Trump are hitting the swing states. Harris spent a lot of time in Michigan. Meanwhile, Trump spoke in North Carolina and Georgia. As I said, this is the final stretch. Most voters must have already made up their minds. So it's all about the finishing touches now. Kamala Harris focused on the Muslim vote. Michigan is home to around 200,000 Arab Americans. They put Joe Biden over the line in 2020. They helped him win. But this time, it's not a guarantee. Arab Americans are angry about Biden's support to Israel in the Gaza war. And Harris may have to pay the price for it. She tried to do some damage control on Sunday. She promised to end the Gaza war if elected.
I want to say this year has been difficult, given the scale of death and destruction in Gaza, and given the civilian casualties and displacement in Lebanon. It is devastating. And as president, I will do everything in my power to end the war in Gaza, to bring home the hostages, end the suffering in Gaza, ensure Israel is secure, and ensure the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, freedom, security, and self-determination.
Beyond that, she stuck to the script. She accused Donald Trump of dividing America, promised to fight hate politics, and to resolve the cost of living crisis. Strange, because she's already vice president. And that's been a struggle for Harris, really. She's a member of the current administration, but the current administration is deeply unpopular. Biden's approval ratings are at 39%, so Harris finds herself in a spot of bother. She can't criticize her own government, but she can also not embrace it. So Kamala Harris has opted for middle ground. She's not calling for new leadership. She's calling for a new generation of leadership.
It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next president of the United States of America.
On the other side, Trump did what Trump does. He held a number of rallies on Sunday. Most of them had the same theme: America is a broken country. Only he can fix it. It's a strategy that worked for him in 2016. It's finding even more takers this time around, it seems, because of the cost of living crisis. Trump's campaign is mostly centered around two issues: tariffs and immigration. We saw that again on Sunday.
The United States is now an occupied country. Can you imagine having to say, we're an occupied country? But it will soon be an occupied country no longer. On November 5th, 2024, it will be Liberation Day in America. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. I will rescue every city and town that has been invaded and conquered, and we will put the vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail. or kick them the hell out of our country.
Some extreme rhetoric there, but clearly America likes it. Donald Trump also trained his guns on pollsters and journalists, quite literally. You see, Trump was surrounded by bulletproof glass at the rally, but those glasses had gaps. Trump said he wasn't worried, though, because to get to him, an assassin would have to shoot through the press corps, and Trump says he doesn't mind that.
I have a piece of glass over here, and I don't have a piece of glass there, and I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news, and I don't mind that so much, because I don't mind.
Trump also took issue with a new poll. It says Kamala Harris is leading him in the state of Iowa. The poll has surprised a lot of people because Iowa voted for Trump in 2016 and again in 2020. The last Democrat to flip it was Barack Obama. If Harris does that, it would be a big setback to Donald Trump. Of course, his campaign has rejected this poll. They say it's an attempt to demoralize voters. And frankly, there's a lot of that going on this time around, especially on social media. Hundreds of posts are spreading fake news about the election. Most of them are Trump supporters, but some are Democrats too. And why are they doing this? To destroy the credibility of the election process. Around 70% Americans think that Donald Trump will not concede if he loses, that he will question the results like he did the last time. His supporters are laying the groundwork for that. Let me show you some examples. This video is from Pennsylvania. An influencer filmed a man dropping off a large number of ballots. He said the whole thing was suspicious. But guess what? The man was a postmaster. His job is to drop off ballots. A lot of accounts also posted pictures with this caption: "I live in Canada, but I drove down to vote." The idea is to say that even Canadians are voting for Harris. Again, it's a false claim. That first video was debunked by poll officials, but not before it got 6 million views. Plus, it is unnecessary work for the election officials. They must conduct fair elections. At the same time, they must also bust fake news. Why can't social media platforms pitch in? Because they are part of the problem, especially Elon Musk and X. He's the most followed person on his platform, and he is pushing fake news. Elon Musk says Democrats are making illegal migrants vote. He also said if Trump is not elected, this will be the last US election. Again, fake news and dangerous rhetoric. Of course, if Trump wins, none of this will matter. But if he doesn't, expect nervous days for America. One reason for that nervousness is what happened in January 2021. The Capitol riots, the day when America's Parliament building was overrun. You can feel that nervousness here. We've been going around Washington, D.C. over the last few days. Things are certainly different. For starters, we've seen a lot more fences. Even the sidewalks near the White House have been cordoned off. We saw a lot more security presence too. The people we spoke to are also worried. They have businesses here. Their children go to school here. So the possibility of violence is very scary. Take a look at how Washington is preparing, or rather bracing, for Election Day. Welcome to Washington, D.C. Just a couple of days until this town gets a new chief. Or rather, a commander-in-chief. Elections usually bring excitement and energy, a feeling of change and hope. But around here, the mood is a bit different. Yes, people are concerned about the results, but they're more concerned about what happens after. This is the Capitol Hill. You may remember what happened here the last time. Hundreds of Trump supporters breached security and stormed this building. They were refusing to accept that Donald Trump had lost the election. So senators and members of Congress had to be rushed to safe rooms and bunkers. Now we have another election involving Donald Trump, and everyone has the same question on their mind. If he loses, will there be another attack? Authorities are working to ensure that doesn't happen. For starters, security has been increased. Most of the popular protest sites have been fenced. Nearly 2,100 officers have been deployed. That's 300 more than January 2021. The hope is any fallout will be contained. Near the White House, similar arrangements are in place. The Lafayette Park is partially closed. So are the sidewalks near the White House. Officials are not taking any chances. They want constitutional centers to be safe in case things go south. Washington's governor is also on the job. He has activated some of the National Guards. Think of them as paramilitary forces. Each US state has National Guards stationed inside, sort of like backup for the army. In Washington, these troops have been put on standby. All that security may sound good on paper, but it only adds to the worries for the residents of the city. They got a taste of the violence in 2017 when Donald Trump was inaugurated as president. Hundreds of people took over Washington to the chants of "Not my president." Then they got the shock of their lives in 2021 when the Capitol riots happened. And now the people of Washington say that they're scared and nervous. A lot of businesses have boarded up their storefronts, fearing riots or violent protests. These are the people at the forefront of America's political divide. If the election is close, things may turn worse. Chances are candidates will approach the Supreme Court, another institution based in Washington. A legal battle is likely to bring a flood of supporters from both sides. A scenario that doesn't read well. Any violence will affect the locals in many ways. Their businesses are on the firing line. Roads may get closed, schools and offices could be shut, and police presence could turn the city into a fortress.
It's a sad state for the democracy in the United States. Why should freedom have to protect your own property when you disagree with somebody? Doesn't make any sense.
We all knows what happened when things doesn't go Trump's way. He incites his followers to protest in violent ways, and I think it's smart. I actually work a couple of blocks down in a government building, and I don't want to come to work on Tuesday. I think it's going to be hectic and crazy. I wish we would be off.
For officials, this is a tough choice. You can't stop supporters from holding peaceful protests. But how do you ensure the situation does not descend into chaos? This is the National Mall. This is the long shot of Washington, D.C. that you see in most Hollywood films. And these are the grounds where some of this country's historic protests and campaigns have unfolded. This place is open to peaceful demonstrations, but you need permission first. So far, at least 9 groups have applied, most of them left-leaning. And this is where the authorities face a dilemma. Do you give permission to opposing groups and risk a face-off? And if you deny permission to all, are you trampling on their right to protest? There are no easy choices as election day nears. Even afterwards, the danger isn't over. In the last election, the anger did not spill over immediately. It exploded weeks later on January 6th. So next week is merely the first in a series of challenges. The eyes of the world will be on Washington, D.C. The international press is here watching. The question is, what will we see? A peaceful transition of power or another crack in the foundation of US democracy? The race is a close one. Political ads are flooding the airwaves, and one such ad has stirred controversy. It shows a polling booth. A woman enters to vote. She looks at her husband nervously, then locks eyes with another woman. Both of them vote. They don't exchange any words, and finally they join their husbands. The ad doesn't really say very much, but the message is quite simple and clear. These 2 women cast secret votes. What's that? It's when you hide who you voted for. So the implication is that these women did not tell their husbands they voted secretly for Kamala Harris. And this did not go down well with the Trump campaign. They have slammed this advertisement. But the thing is, secret voting is not new. It's been happening for quite some time, and it's said to be quite widespread in this election. Look at this YouGov poll. 1 in 8 women say that they vote differently from their husbands, and they do it secretly. They don't tell their husbands about it. Nearly 5% women say that they refrain from voting to avoid a conflict with their husband. Which brings us to the historic gender divide in this year's election. It is shaping up to be a battle of the sexes. Donald Trump is popular among men. 53% say that they will vote for him. Kamala Harris is leading among the women voters. Nearly 54% women want her as president. So the gender gap is quite staggering. In fact, it's the largest since 1980. But what led to this wide gap? A lot of issues, perhaps none as big as abortion. For a lot of women, it is defining this election. And while some are resorting to secret voting, others are quite vocal about it. We saw this over the weekend at a women's march in Washington, D.C. Here's our report. Abortion rights. They've always been a point of contention in US politics. But this year, they're at the forefront. This is the first US presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. Women in America lost their national right to abortion. They lost the right over their own bodies. And now they're out on the streets to fight for it. For millions of voters, reproductive rights could determine the next president of the United States. And they're making themselves seen and heard. This is Washington, D.C., the national capital and the center of all the political action. This is where hundreds of women have gathered for a march to rally for abortion rights. We are in the American capital where hundreds of feminists and reproductive rights activists have gathered just days before the election. This event is strategically timed along with the nationwide Get Out the Vote efforts. It's a powerful reminder of what's at stake in this election. To understand why abortion rights are such a pivotal issue today, we need to go back in history. In 1973, the US Supreme Court gave a landmark ruling in a case called Roe versus Wade. It granted American women the constitutional right to abortion. But nearly 50 years later, in 2022, the Supreme Court overturned that precedent. So abortion was no longer a national right in the US. The power to regulate women's choices was back in the hands of individual states. Now, each state can decide whether women can abort unwanted pregnancies, at what stage, and under what conditions. Basically, access to abortion now depends on where you are in America. For example, here in Washington, D.C., abortion is allowed in all stages of pregnancy. But in Texas, it is illegal unless you are dying. So far, 17 American states have outlawed abortion. Some have very narrow exceptions, like only in cases of rape, incest, or if a person's life is in danger. 8 other states allow limited access to the procedure. This is despite the fact that nearly 66% Americans support complete legal access to abortion.
Since 2016, we've been telling folks that this is the most consequential election of your lifetime, and each year it's been true, whether it's 2018, 2020, 2022, and more than ever in 2024, we are voting on freedom or fascism, and there's really no middle ground.
We got to stand up for democracy. We have to stand up for a woman's right to have control over her body, control over her life. Women's rights are human rights, and we were back in the hallways.
Which brings us to the presidential race. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. Support for abortion rights will benefit the Democrats. Harris has been quite vocal about the issue. She has vowed to protect women's rights if elected. But she was part of the administration which was in power when Roe versus Wade was overturned. Her predecessor, Joe Biden himself, has not been as vocal about the issue because of his Catholic background. So critics question if Harris will be different. Meanwhile, Donald Trump appointed the 3 Supreme Court justices who played a crucial role in overturning Roe versus Wade. He also supports the idea of US states governing abortion, although in the last few months he seems to have softened his stance. He called himself the father of IVF, that's in vitro fertilization. He also said that he would not push for a national abortion ban as president. As activists prepare to march past the White House today, their message is clear. They're watching. They want action from the next administration, from those in power. In fact, this is more than just a march, they say. This is a demand for accountability and a call for the next government to prioritize reproductive rights. With the presidential race deadlocked, abortion rights could be the deciding factor in crucial swing states. These are the 7 states that will decide who becomes president. Many activists here fear another Trump presidency and support Kamala Harris. But this may not translate into as many votes as the Democrats had expected.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified as to what's going to happen to this country and women's rights. This is the most election in our country's history. And I think a lot of Americans don't realize that. What's at stake?
A lot has changed in the United States since 2020, but everything has changed for the women of America. Abortion rights have become one of the most polarizing issues of this election. For women under 30, it's even more important than inflation, they say. So this march, right before the US presidential election, is a reminder that the fight for these women is not just political, it's also personal.
Since 2016.
Now let's look at another major electoral issue, the issue of illegal immigrants. Every single day, hundreds of migrants come into the US illegally. This happens every day. Normally, these immigrants are taken for processing. They are then given a chance to seek asylum. They have to wait for citizenship before they can enjoy the same rights as the locals, as American citizens. But that's not always the case. Some places in the US extend the right to vote to non-citizens as well, even illegal immigrants. And this has become a major issue in this election. We went down to the city of Tacoma Park in Maryland. It's a so-called sanctuary city, which gives non-citizens the right to vote. Here's what we saw. It's the final day of campaigning in Tacoma Park. The city council election is in full swing, and candidate Ambrose Agose is going old school. With pamphlets in hand, he is going door to door in the hope of winning over the last remaining undecided voters.
All type of community are supporting me: white, African, Black American, Indian, Spanish. Yes, I have all those communities supporting me.
Agose's campaign materials reflect his wide outreach. They are printed in several languages, including English, Spanish, and French, even Hindi. That's because he's not just seeking the votes of Americans, he's appealing to people from all parts of the world who live here, even illegally. This is Tacoma Park, a city in the US state of Maryland. This is on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. And Tacoma Park is unique because it allows non-US citizens to vote in local city-level elections. This is both legal US residents and illegal immigrants. They're all allowed to vote, and this is a right that was given to them way back in 1993. The idea was to involve all people in local decision-making and planning. Tacoma Park has been a sanctuary city for migrants since 1985. For decades, it has provided refuge to migrants of all kinds. Today, about 30% of the city's population is made up of migrants. Agose is aiming to win their support. He's running to represent Ward 6, where many migrants and non-citizens live. Agose says, even without citizenship, they must have a vote.
People who live here, they contribute building the city. So when it comes to the election, to give them a chance also to express their voice.
A lot of Americans do not agree with this view, especially the Republicans and their leader, Donald Trump. They believe, and perhaps rightly so, that allowing non-citizens to vote is a dangerous trend. Trump aims to abolish the idea of sanctuary cities altogether, and the Republican Party has been pushing for legislation to ensure this. Republicans like House Speaker Mike Johnson say that the non-citizen voting process is a clear and present danger. Why? Because they fear that this could ultimately change the makeup of the US Congress. Republicans have tried to bring in laws that restrict non-citizens from elections. Bills have been introduced in the US Congress that require proof of citizenship before you register to vote and restrict federal funding to cities like Tacoma Park. In fact, earlier this year, they also blocked a law that allowed non-citizens to vote in local elections in DC. Immigration was already a hot button issue in this election. The idea of allowing non-citizens to vote has only intensified the debate. The concept itself is not new, though. Only a few cities allow non-citizens to vote, that too in just local elections. The turnout too remains extremely low because illegal immigrants tend to not want to attract attention by turning up to vote. Yet, there have been cases of fraud. In Michigan, which is a battleground state, a Chinese student pretended to be a US citizen. He successfully cast a vote in the presidential election. Observers say such cases are rare. But in close polls where every vote counts, no side wants to take chances. Also, immigration has become a point of contention for American voters. 3 out of 5 Americans say it's a key issue. Some accuse illegal immigrants of taking away jobs. Others say immigrants use welfare services and unfairly take away American taxpayer money. There are also safety concerns. Migrants are accused of being criminals and of smuggling drugs into the country. Donald Trump has capitalized on this anti-immigrant sentiment. Trump says that November 5th will be Liberation Day if he is elected. He plans to crack down on illegal immigrants. He is pushing for mass deportations.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. It's going to be the largest deportation of criminals. We're going to get them out of here fast.
Trump wants to deport about 15 to 20 million illegal immigrants using a law from 1798 called the Alien Enemies Act. Reports show that 88% of all Republicans support this. They support mass deportations. Obviously, this has immigrants concerned.
A lot of us are scared because Trump says the first to be deported will be the Venezuelans. Understand?
Every 4 years it's terrifying of having the knowledge, of having to know where the ICE detention is. So if my husband gets taken, I know where to go, because it's terrifying having to tell my kids why we're voting a certain way, because those elections are so important of where their dad is, where their dad's status could end up.
The issue of immigration in America is too big for either party to ignore. Both Republicans and Democrats are promising to reduce the flow of illegal immigrants, but neither side has presented a concrete plan to fix the problem. Involving illegal immigrants in the democratic process and giving them the right to vote only complicates things further.
It has to do with a little bit of intelligence. And I have a piece of glass over here, and I don't have a piece of glass there. And I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much, because I don't mind. I don't mind that. So I have a piece of glass here. And the problem with that glass is I don't look great on television when you have a 4-inch piece of glass that a howitzer can't go through. No, when you see yourself on television, you say, boy, you're really not very recognizable, to be honest with you, which is good. But here's the problem. So I have glass here, I have glass here. Now, I'm not worried about this. Look, what do I have? A couple of people, and they're friends, generally. There are a couple of people I don't like in that group, but that's like, no, but look at it. Look at it. I have nobody here. What do I need this piece? But where I think I do need a piece is here. What the hell do I know? I must be wrong. I must be wrong. Probably it was probably Biden or the other one that said, screw him, don't give him the glass. Oh, you don't think? Let me tell you, I'll tell you what. Secret Service guys were very brave when I got shot. They stood right in the line of fire. And I don't want to speak out of school, but I can say from the time I got elected, these guys were fighting for more help, for more people like you have up there, great people. But
Economy, abortion, immigration, the war in Gaza, all of these are key issues in this presidential battle. But right before Election Day, a new unlikely flashpoint has emerged. The death of a squirrel named Peanut. How did he die? Why is his death an election issue? And why do the Republicans say that they want justice? Let's start with Peanut's story. It begins around 7 years ago. His mother got hit by a car in New York City. She died. That's when a man named Mark Longo found him. He saw the accident, so he initially took in Peanut. It was supposed to be a temporary move. Mark cared for him like his own pet. This continued for about 8 months. After that, Mark released the squirrel. He thought Peanut was well enough to survive outdoors. But that did not last very long. Peanut apparently lacked survival skills. So he returned. Mark took him in again, and Peanut lived happily as an indoor squirrel. So the story goes. Soon the two started making videos, Peanut eating waffles, Peanut running around the house, Peanut dressed. The internet loved the squirrel. And in no time, Peanut became viral. Right now, his Instagram has more than 670,000 followers. 670,000 followers for a squirrel. All was going well for both of them until last week. On October 30th, New York's DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, raided Mark Longo's house. 6 officers showed up. They were acting on multiple anonymous complaints. It was about unsafe housing of wildlife. So they seized Peanut the squirrel. They also took a raccoon named Fred. Now, in New York, you cannot keep a wild animal without a license, so the arrest was legal. Even Mark Longo knew that. But he decided to fight it. He hired a legal team to get them back. He also gathered more than 20,000 signatures, all asking for the return of the animals. But by November 1st, it was all in vain. The DEC announced that they had euthanized both Peanut and Fred. Why? Because of the fear of rabies. According to them, Peanut bit someone in the department, so they had to test for rabies. Living animals cannot be tested for the disease, so they had to be euthanized. Mark Longo expressed his grief. He said the DEC was cruel. He accused the agency of excessive force. The story should have ended there. But then the Republicans took note. And that's where the issue exploded. Peanut's death was not about public safety anymore. It was about democratic overreach. It turned into a symbol of government interference. Republicans chimed in on the injustice. Leading the cause was Tesla CEO Elon Musk. He posted several times about this incident, calling the government a quote-unquote killing machine. And it did not stop there. The Trump campaign then joined in.
So I know Don's fired up about Peanut the squirrel. We were on the way down here from Cincinnati He was like, is it really the case that the Democrats murdered the Elon Musk of squirrels? And I said, yeah, it sounds like, have you seen the videos of this squirrel? Yeah. He's a genius, or he was.
This is not the first time animals have featured in the presidential race, or this presidential race. In September, a video from Ohio's Springfield went viral. It claimed that immigrants killed ducks from the local park for food. Springfield police dismissed these rumors, but the Republicans went to town with it, portraying Donald Trump as the Messiah with AI-generated images of him on top of a cat, and even one where he's surrounded by ducks. Again, the message was simple. Immigrants did not just steal American jobs, they also stole America's pets. And Donald Trump would save them. So cats and dogs became a flashpoint back then, and now a squirrel is the headliner. It tells you what you need to know about American politics, really. Forget inflation, healthcare, or even foreign policy. This election has gone to the dogs, then cats and ducks, and now even squirrels. Have you heard of the Yiwu Index? Yiwu is located in China. It is one of the country's most popular wholesale markets. It sells goods to international retailers. In 2016, opinion polls predicted a win for Hillary Clinton, but Yiwu had a different opinion. They saw a different trend, the rising sale of Trump merchandise. So Yiwu thought that Trump would win, and he did. Hence the question, is election merchandise a reliable tool to predict polls? How big is it in this election? And which candidate is winning the merch battle? We decided to find out. Pins, posters, flags. Even these iconic Make America Great Again hats. Merchandise like these are a staple of the US presidential elections. Campaigns sell them, supporters buy them. But these items aren't just pieces of memorabilia. They're often seen as indicators of who is winning the election. Here in the United States, elections aren't just decided by votes. They're also decided by what I'm holding here. This is political merchandise, badges for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. These serve as symbols of political allegiance and a public display of candidate support. But can the sales of these products alone determine the outcome of an election? Let's find out.
And make America great again.
Over the years, campaign merchandise has become a strategic tool. Surveys say 70% people buy political merch to influence others. 68% believe that buying it can affect election outcomes. Stores that sell merchandise agree with this. Reports say merchandise sales got it right 9 out of 11 times, meaning in 9 out of the last 11 elections, the candidate who sold more merchandise won. And which were the two exceptions? The year 2000 and 2016. Both these elections had something in common. The candidate with a popular vote lost. Experts say there is no correlation between sales and election results, though. But in a battle as close as this one, it's hard to ignore how merch has become a measure of political momentum. The question then is, who has the momentum? Who is winning in terms of merchandise sales? On Amazon, it is Donald Trump. His merch sales are outperforming Kamala Harris's by a wide margin, almost by 5 times. For every piece of Harris merchandise being sold, there are 5 of Donald Trump. It's a staggering lead. Also because Trump has been longer in this race. Since the beginning of this year, Trump merchandise worth $140 million has been sold. Harris entered the picture only a few months ago. She sold items worth around $26 million. But here's the twist in the tale. The merchandise that's meant to be a symbol of belonging is also proof of America's dependence on China. The hats that say, "Make America Great Again," are making Chinese manufacturers bigger. And this is ironic, especially for candidates advocating Buy American policies. The soaring sales are fueling Chinese businesses. Chinese traders are pumping more and more merchandise into the American markets with the help of e-commerce websites. And they're finding millions of takers. That's because their products are cheap. Take the MAGA hat, for example. The Trump website sells it for $40. Chinese traders sell it for $4. That's 10 times lower. Same for Harris merchandise. Kamala hats on the campaign website sell for $47. On China's Temu, they sell for less than $3. That makes Chinese goods an obvious choice for most Americans. Look at this Trump hat. It says, President Trump save America. But this hat is made in China. And this is a Chinese interference that Americans must be investigating in this election, I guess. But Chinese or American, merchandise sales is a good reflection of voter enthusiasm, although experts caution against reading too much into it, because polling and other traditional methods remain the foundation of election predictions, and even they get it wrong way too often. So it may not predict the results. It may not even be made in America. But campaign merchandise does tell a story. It reflects the spirit of American elections. This election is very much about domestic issues like abortion or inflation. Foreign policy is just a footnote. So why should the world care about the result? Why should you care about it? Because the fallout could be global. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump represent two very different ideologies. Trump is an isolationist. He believes in using trade as a weapon. He's also not a fan of alliances, especially NATO. Harris, on the other hand, is less vocal on such issues. Her foreign policy is seen as Biden 2.0. If she wins, she'll be forced to handle two full-blown wars. Does she have the experience to do that? We'll have to wait and watch. But beyond the candidates, there are other reasons too. The US is the largest economy in the world. It is also the second largest trading country. America trades with more than 200 nations and regions. It makes up 9% of global trades. If the next president is protectionist, every country will feel the pinch. Same with climate change. The US is the second biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, but Trump doesn't believe in climate change. Last time he was president, he pulled his country out of the Paris Climate Agreement. If he wins again, will he repeat that? Will he roll back America's climate commitments? These are questions that will affect the entire world. But tonight, we are only looking at the strategic fallout of the election result. What do other countries want? Who are they backing to win? Who do they want to win? Let's start with India. New Delhi does not need to pick a side. That's how stable ties are. There is bipartisan support for a long-term partnership with India. With Donald Trump, Prime Minister Modi has great chemistry. With Harris, he can hope for continuity. Like I said, she's Biden 2.0 or expected to be, and Biden did a lot for India-US relations. So either way, India is fine, but most other countries do have a definite pick. Western Europe and NATO will be hoping for a Harris win. You may remember what happened at the 2019 NATO summit in London. Western leaders got together to mock Trump. Their comments were caught on a hot mic. Again, the issue was ideology. Trump doesn't see the logic in defending countries on another continent. America first is his mantra, which is why Ukraine will also be wary of Trump. President Zelensky did meet him during his trip to New York, but that is unlikely to have moved Trump. He says he will end the war on day one in the White House. He hasn't said how, though. But chances are he will cut military aid to Ukraine, basically force Kiev to sue for peace. Now we come to West Asia. Israel has a very clear pick in this race. Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have a great friendship. Trump moved the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He also brokered the Abraham Accords between Israel and some Arab countries. So Netanyahu would like to have Trump back in the White House. If Biden was running, it may have been a bit different. Despite some tough words, Biden has basically given him endless support. He also keeps saying that he's a Zionist. But Kamala Harris is likely to be tougher on Israel. She may not say it during rallies, but by all indications, she'll put more pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister. And what about the Gulf states? Well, Saudi Arabia will be happy to see Biden out. Remember, Biden promised to turn Riyadh into a pariah. On his watch, the relationship broke down completely at one point. In comparison, Trump was a lot more friendly. He was president when the Khashoggi murder happened. Most Western countries isolated Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, but Donald Trump did not. Reports say he even bragged about saving MBS from isolation. So chances are Riyadh would like to see him back. So would North Korea. Kim Jong-un had 3 meetings with Donald Trump. Yes, none of them led to anything, but at least Kim was on the world stage. Harris, though, is expected to continue Biden's policy. Closer ties with South Korea and no talks with the North. But here's the fun fact. Kim's biggest ally wants the opposite. I'm talking about China. Donald Trump waged a trade war against China when he was president. He's promising a second round this time. more tthan 60% tariff on all Chinese imports. And this would be devastating. Chinese imports are worth more than $560 billion. Imagine a 60% tariff on all of that. China cannot afford it, especially in the current state of their economy. Having said that, Trump may not be eager to protect Taiwan. He doesn't want to defend NATO, so why would he help Taiwan? And Beijing knows this. They recently said that the US could discard Taiwan if Trump wins the election. So it's a question of priorities for China, trade or Taiwan. What do they want more? Of course, all of this is based on two assumptions. One, that Trump 2.0 will be Trump 1.0. If you listen to his rallies, that seems to be the case, but you can never be sure. The second assumption is that Kamala Harris will be Biden 2.0. Again, we can't be sure. Maybe Harris will come into her own as president. Maybe she will chart her own path. And if she does, these positions could change. Safe to say, it's a big week in geopolitics. All the global capitals will be watching Washington closely. Sadly, attacks on Hindu religious organizations are becoming far too common in various parts of the world. The latest incident is from Canada. Yesterday, 2 temples were attacked, the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton, near the city of Toronto, and the Lakshmi Narayan Temple in Surrey, near Vancouver. 2 attacks in 2 different parts of Canada within a few hours of each other. Let's look at the Brampton attack first. We have videos from the scene which clearly show the perpetrators. Take a look at this first.
Oh shit, 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 oh shit,
As you can see, the attackers were Khalistanis. They're a group of separatists who want to carve out a separate state for the Sikh people. And they're prepared to attack Hindus to achieve their goals. The Khalistanis had gathered outside the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton yesterday. They knew that there would be a lot of Hindus present. The High Commission of India in Ottawa had arranged for a consular camp at the temple. They were handing out certificates, necessary paperwork to help Indians in Canada. It's routine consular work, but it draws hundreds of people. Now, the High Commission knew that there was the possibility of danger, and they'd asked for strong security measures at the event. But as you saw in the video, Canada took the warning lightly, and the result was chaos. After failing to prevent the entirely predictable attack, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau went into damage control mode. He put out this post on social media calling the acts of violence unacceptable. He added that every Canadian has the right to practice their faith freely and safely. But did you notice something? He did not really specify who committed the violence or highlight which group was attacked. All he did was spout generic statements. It was an Indian origin MP who had to point out the obvious, that the attack was orchestrated by Canadian Khalistani extremists. He said that they crossed a red line with their brazen attack this time, that they were being given a free pass under the guise of freedom of expression. It seems that this is obvious to everyone except Prime Minister Trudeau, who continues to try and shield his Khalistani vote bank. And this isn't even the worst of it. For that, you'll have to look at the second attack, the one in Surrey. Khalistanis had gathered outside the Lakshmi Narayan Temple in Surrey. They were protesting, so some Hindu temple goers held a counter-protest. Then we have videos like this emerging from the site. Those people being tackled and arrested were Hindus. The Canadian police arrested 3 Hindu men. The police did not disclose the charges against them. As you saw, the men were violently tossed to the ground and then taken away. So Hindus are beaten up with sticks outside one Canadian temple and then arrested outside another. This is the state of Canada today. How did things get this bad? What has led to all the anti-Hindu sentiment in the country? The answer is quite simple. Trudeau and his government. Every other day, they paint India as some sort of enemy nation. And they keep hurling unfounded allegations at India. Last year, they claimed that India was involved in the killing of the Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. They have yet to offer any proof. And then last week, they pointed fingers at India's Home Minister Amit Shah, again without any proof. It's actually worse than the usual baseless allegations. Canada's Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister David Morrison contacted a foreign media outlet, America's Washington Post, and he told them that Shah was behind the plot to kill Nijjar. He did not make an official public announcement. He did not approach Canadian media. He just leaked this information to the Washington Post, again without any hard proof. India summoned a Canadian diplomat over this incident on Saturday.
It was conveyed in a note that the government of India protests in the strongest terms to the absurd and baseless references made to the Union Home Minister of India before the committee by Deputy Minister David Morrison. In fact, the revelation that high Canadian officials deliberately leak unfounded insinuations to the international media as part of a conscious strategy to discredit India and influence other nations only confirms the view Government of India has long held about current Canadian government's political agenda and behavioral pattern.
It's this behavioral pattern that is fueling the unrest in Canada and emboldening the Khalistanis to attack Hindus, because they can clearly see that the Trudeau regime will support them no matter what.